Welcome to another episode of the Para Cave podcast. And now over to your host, Troy Warner, broadcasting live from the world-famous Para Cave.
And yes, hello and welcome back to another episode of the Para Cave podcast. Troy Warner here, and it is the NRL Round review podcast that I do each and every week. Now this week, unfortunately, I don't have a special guest joining me like I have in previous weeks. I've had the likes of Mark Geyer and Elliot Lovejoy join me for a round review of the NRL. So I'll hope to get one in the next couple of weeks and each and every week to try and join me to do a NRL round review. So let me know who you would like to hear and join me to do a NRL round review, and I'll see if I can get them on the show to do one. But the NRL round number 6 kicked off on Thursday night last week up there at Suncorp Stadium. It was the Dolphins taking on the Panthers. The Panthers, they were one winner and 4 losses going into this game. The Dolphins, they got their season off to a winning way against the Gold Coast Titans the week before, but it was another loss to the Panthers. It was 30 points to 12. The Dolphins got the win, and 5 tries to 2. The Hammer so Tabuai Fido, he scored a triple for the Dolphins. One of them was a length of the field try. It was great to see him out in open space. Jake Gavarillo as well scored I think that was a length of the field try as well. Jermaine Osako, 5 from 5. It was 18-6 at half time. Moses Leota and Casey McLean scored the tries for the Panthers. Nathan Cleary, 2 from 2. Moses Leota try, well, that was a funny one, wasn't it? Just talk about being in the right place at the right time. Jack Bostock, something that he would rather forget, that is for sure. Tried to kick the ball over the dead ball line, and it was not a good kick at all, and it ended up back in the field, or not in the field of play, into the in-goal area, and Moses Leota was there to score. I think he scored the last 2 times he's played the Dolphins, so he loves playing the Dolphins. Now, Paul Alamotti got sin bin in this game. 18-6 at halftime, ended up being 30 points to 12. Now, that is 5 straight losses for the Panthers, which sees them in second last position on the ladder. Look, I don't think it is panic stations at this point for the full-time in a row defending premiers, but they would certainly like to be in a better position than what they are at the moment. They take on the Sydney Roosters this week, the team that started their losing ways way back in round number 2. So that would be an interesting game, but more of that next week. The Dolphins, back-to-back winners. Look, they're playing some good footy. Slowly but surely they're getting into their range of winning games and getting used to the grind. Isaiah Katoa is really controlling this team, and he's a great young prospect for rugby league. He's certainly showing that he is a leader of that side up there in Redcliffe, and certainly did his learning at Penrith, so it's sort of like the master up against the apprentice, I guess you could say, with Nathan Cleary and Isaiah Katoa playing each other. But I think Isaiah got the money on that night, that is for sure. So the Dolphins go on their winning ways, and the Panthers, as I said, they continue their losing streak. The next game again was the first game on the Friday night was the Dragons taking on the Titans down there at Wollongong WIN Stadium in front of a crowd of 8,500 people. A bit of a hard time slot for WIN Stadium, I guess, or it's a hard time slot for anywhere, to be honest. The Friday night 6 p.m. game, you've got people just finishing work, trying to get there, and the like, so a little bit disappointing crowd. But the Dragons, wow, they really turned it on, didn't they? 38 points to 16. Christian Tuipulotu, he scored a double, as well as Tyrell Sloan as well. Valentine Holmes got on the try-scoring list. Kyle Flanagan, Dylan Egan, Gerringong Lions product. He got his first NRL try. So certainly that area down there in Gerringong is producing some great rugby league players. I think the Andrew Johns on the Footy Show said that out of that area they've got about 8 or 9 current NRL players running around in the NRL. So certainly some great players have come from the Gerringong Lions. And as we know, as being a Parramatta fan, the number one player that has ever come out of Gerringong is the Crow, Mick Cronin. So, yeah, he is the greatest player to come out of Gerringong, you could say. But back to this game, the Titans, well, they had a back-to-back losses for them now. So a little bit disappointing for them. They sit in 11th spot on the ladder after a couple of wins at the start of the season. They play the Raiders up next, so that will be a tough assignment for them. But the Dragons, it was 24-4 at half time. They really blew the game away right before half time. There was a 6-minute period there where they scored 3 tries, one to Valentine Holmes, Tyrell Sloan and Kyle Flanagan, and then Christian Tuipulotu, he scored right after half time. So quick succession of tries there for the Dragons. Valentine Holmes, 5 from 7. And those 5 quick tries really blew the game away. It was 24-4 at half time. So a little bit of a better effort in the second half from the Titans. But it wasn't to be. Phil Sami, he scored a try in the 61st minute. Now that was I think that was pretty much off the kickoff, because Tyrell Sloan scored a try for the Dragons in the 59th minute, and then Sami scored a try. The Titans got the ball back and practically scored right off the kickoff. Amazing to see that one. But they will be concerned about that. The Dragons, they find themselves in 10th spot at the moment. They take on Manly next week. So that will be an interesting one, that is for sure. Now, the second game on the Friday night was again at Suncorp Stadium, which saw the Brisbane Broncos take on the Sydney Roosters. Now, most people, like myself, tipped the Broncos to win, being up at Suncorp Stadium. A massive crowd there, 40,814. But it was the Roosters who got the victory, 26 points to 16. Billy Smith got a double, Angus Crichton got a try, Nat Butcher, Sandon Smith 4 from 4 conversions and 1 from 1 penalty goal. Billy Smith unfortunately got sin bin as well. 20 points to 12 at half time. So look, it was a really good quick game. I think the Roosters scored the first try through Billy Smith, and then Selwyn Cobbo and Reece Walsh scored tries for the Broncos. You thought the Broncos were going to take over and take control, but the Roosters, they really hung in there, which was great to see. And they ended up scoring a try right before half time there, and then Nat Butcher sealed the deal with his try, and wasn't he happy about that one? That is for sure. It was a good game from Hugo Savala, the young halfback, making his first starting game against the Broncos at halfback. His first starting game at halfback. Pretty much a good kicking game from him. I think he'll retain that spot actually for this week's game. You will find against the Panthers, unless if they lose this game against the Panthers, then I think it's going to be very hard for Chad Townsend to find himself back into this Roosters side. So Savala actually did a good job, so he'll keep that spot for a while now, I think. Connor Watson, he came into his own a little bit. I guess with Origin coming up around the corner, he just needs to probably try and secure that bench spot for New South Wales, which he had last year. Now, the big talking point out of this game was actually, well, it was on-field and off-field, but it involved an off-field person. I'm not going to go into too much about it. Everyone would have their own thoughts about it. Now, that was the Spencer Leniu, Jonathan Thurston episode that happened on the field, first of all, and then apparently in the tunnels at Suncorp Stadium. Now, as I said, I'm not going to go into too much of it. I'm not going to take sides of who's right, who's wrong, but it goes back to the incident that happened in Las Vegas, Round 1, 2024, and some comments that were made about that situation, and then about a situation that happened after that as well. So, look, everyone's had their say about it. I think JT, Jonathan Thurston, has released a statement. The Footy Show didn't go into too much detail about that one. They have left that to Jonathan Thurston and Spencer to, I guess, sort out. But look, it's not a good look, I don't think, on the field after a game. And certainly not the headlines you want to see coming out of that game after a great win by the Roosters, just their second win of the year. So they beat the Panthers in round number 2, and they got flogged by the Broncos in round number 1. So it was good to see them come back. They had 50 points scored on them in round 1, so it was good to see them come back and get a victory against the Broncos, who, as I said previously, beat them in round number 1, absolutely smashed them. As for the Broncos, well, look, they were probably a little bit disappointing, weren't they? They were sort of in and out of the game. Reece Walsh, did he have a good game? Probably not. He's probably struggled a little bit, I think, this season. I guess teams have slowly sort of worked him out, and he just isn't having the impact, I don't think, that we have seen him have in previous years. Now, moving to Saturday, and a double header out there at Optus Stadium in Perth. So very interesting to have a double header out there in Perth. There were reports that I think it's Roger Cook, the WA Premier, was having chats with Andrew Abdo, the CEO of the NRL, about expansion and getting a team in WA. So we'll just have to watch this space and see what happens. I think the Premier was supporting the Rabbitohs. I think he's a Rabbitohs supporter, so I think he's supporting them, obviously, in that game, which we'll get to. But that first game, I caught most of the second half of this game at Parramatta Leagues Club in Sturlow's Bar. I was watching that one there as I was waiting for the upcoming game, and worked during the day. But 26,500 people out there at Optus Stadium saw the Sharks get a win, 24 points to 18, 5 tries to 3 to the Sharkies. Sam Stonestreet got a double. Will Kennedy, now he had a try disallowed, which would have been a cracker of a try. I don't think it was a no try. I thought it was a try, but wouldn't you be so upset running all that way and then it not being a try? But anyway, his try that he did score in the 46th minute, well, that was a cracker, wasn't it? I think it was about like 20, 25 metres out, just stepping, getting through gaps, beat half a dozen players, and pirouetted at one time and went over to score. So I think he's off contract. I don't think the Sharks have re-signed him at the moment, so certainly some other clubs will be looking at that, and he'll be wanting to stay at the Sharks for that. Crowd favourite Tom Hazelton, he got a try in the 74th minute, which pretty much wrapped up the game. Look, it was only 8-0 at half time, so still anybody's game. but Manly, they just couldn't get the win back. Luke Brooks, he scored a length of the field try. Daly Cherry Evans got a try right on the 78th minute. Practically put the ball down, threw the ball to Garrick. Garrick popped it over, hoping they could maybe get a miracle try right at the end, but wasn't to be there. And so, second loss in a row for the Sea Eagles. They went down to the Melbourne Storm the week before at Brookvale. The Sharks, look, they haven't been playing the best of footy this year. They went down to the Penrith Panthers at the start of the year in Las Vegas. They've been sort of in and out of games, but it was a little bit better performance from them, which was great to see. And they will be very happy moving on, because they do have the Newcastle Knights who've had a win yesterday, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but they have the Newcastle Knights this round 7, and I think it's the Tigers and then the Eels in Magic Round. So crucial win for them, which sees them into 9th position on the ladder. At the moment, the Sea Eagles are just above them on 8th, just on for and against, so they are still in the top 8. I think the season for them has really changed since A, Tom Trbojevich's injury, and B, the announcement of Daly Cherry Evans leaving the club at the end of the year. So their season has really really turned around since that time. So interesting times at Manly, but for now they are still in the top 8. And the next game at Optus Stadium saw the Rabbitohs take on the Cowboys, which a little bit bigger crowd there, 31,347. Saw the Cowboys get the victory, 24 points to 16. They had a win against the Panthers last week at CommBank, so they've carried that on. I think that's 3 straight wins now for the Cowboys and the Rabbitohs. Well, this was the first game that Latrell Mitchell was starting at 5/8, so with a few injuries to key players, Jamie Humphries, Cody Walker. So Wayne Bennett put Latrell Mitchell into the 5/8 role. Ewan Aitken, he was in the centres. He scored a try. For the Cowboys, Jackson Purdo, how good a player is he? He's only a young bloke, young centre, scored 2 tries in 5 minutes. He is definitely one to watch, and one that the Cowboys will want to keep. I watched him during the Panthers game as well, and he's a very consistent player, certainly, so he knows how to score a try. The boot of Scott Drinkwater was off a little bit, missed a couple of conversions. It was only 6-4 at half-time, and you saw the half-time report from Lara Pitt too. She was interviewing Scott Drinkwater, and he was disappointed about that first half, even though they were winning. So it was still anybody's game at half-time. But it ended up being 4 tries to 3 to the Cowboys, and they get the win. The Rabbitohs, look, I don't think they'll be disappointed with that loss. I mean, obviously you're going to be disappointed losing a game, but it was the first game with new halves pairing. Bud Sullivan was the halfback, and Latrell was the 5/8. So always going to be difficult with a new halves pairing. But look, they still find themselves in 5th position on the ladder, but they are set up now for a massive game against the Bulldogs, which we'll get to next week's games a little bit later, but a massive game against the Bulldogs coming up. As for the Cowboys, well, they find themselves in 13th position. Even though they have won 3 games in a row, they had the bye this week, so they will get another 2 points and potentially, well, they will jump up the ladder a little bit further as well over the course of the weekend. The last game on Saturday, well, look, I was really disappointed about this one. As you could tell in my game review podcast, which I put out earlier, with the Raiders taking on the Eels up there at Darwin in front of a crowd of 9,559. It was an 8-tries-to-2 win to the Raiders, 50 points to 12. It's the second time this season that the Eels have had 50 points put on them. The other occasion being round number 1 in Melbourne. It was 24-6 at half-time. Look, I won't go too much into this game, as you can go back and have a listen to the game day or game review podcast of this game, where I go into more depth about this one. But the Raiders, they have won 4 games this season. They are in the top 4 at the moment. They are probably one of the smoky sides in this competition at the moment. They are playing some good footy. They find themselves in 4th spot. So they are a team that you probably would not want to play against at the moment. As for the Eels, well, very disappointing once again. Hopefully they can jump back in the winner's circle against the Tigers on Easter Monday. But more of that in the game review podcast, so check that one out in the podcast library. On the Sunday, the first game at Amy Park saw the Melbourne Storm take on the Warriors in front of 26,427, and it was the Melbourne Storm who got the victory, 42 points to 14, 7 tries to 3. Ryan Pappenhausen, his radar was on 7 from 7 for him, 36-0 at half-time. The Melbourne Storm, look, it's no doubt they are one of the competition, or if not the competition favourites at the moment. Just outstanding stuff. Harry Grant scored a try. He was controlling things from dummy half. Xavier Coates scored a double. Their tries just look so slick, and to go out 36-0 at halftime, the game was over at halftime. Unfortunately for you Warriors fans, a lot of head scratching I think you need to do to try and find out what you're going to do to win the next game, because as I said, 36-0 at halftime, that is a massive deficit, and confidence must have been down for them to try and get back into this game to win it. But the Melbourne Storm, they're always hard to beat down there in Melbourne, and they certainly showed that, and they certainly showed why they are premiership favourites at the moment. They are a very hard team to beat down in Melbourne. A little bit of an injury concern for Jerome Hughes. He went off early in the second half, I think it was. I think he'll probably, or by all reports, he'll sit out this week and be back next week. But for all your injury concerns, follow the NRL Physio on Instagram. He will keep you updated with his thoughts about the injuries that come through each and every game. So he will have more on that and his podcast as well. So tune into that one. So the Storm, they continue to impress, and they have only lost the one game this season to the Dragons a few weeks ago now. They sit in second spot on the ladder behind the Bulldogs, and they take on the Dolphins next week. The last game of the round, well, look, this was a real surprising game, I think. Up at McDonald Jones Stadium in Newcastle, so the Newcastle Knights taking on the West Tigers. A good crowd, a sold-out crowd of 25,960, I should say. But it was a 4-tries-to-1 victory for the Tigers against the Newcastle Knights. So they reversed the result from round number 1. They only played 5 weeks ago. It was 10-8 to the Newcastle Knights, but the Tigers got the chocolates on this day. And it was 14-0 at half-time. Sunya Taruva, he scored a try. I think it's 7 tries in the last 4 games, or this season I think it is, in total. 7 or 8 tries for him, so he's kept his form up from the Panthers, crossed over to the Tigers. Jareem Buller got a try, a little kick and a little grubber through and got a try there. Adam Dewey got a try, as well as 2 goals out of 5 attempts, so the radar wasn't on for Adam Dewey. But they certainly know how to score points, and they welcome back Jerome Luai as well as the conductor in this side, but they just playing some really good footy. And look, news today for you Tigers fans that you probably did not want to hear, but Lachlan Galvin has decided to reject the offer from the Tigers after 2026, so he'll be at the club until then, unless something miraculously happens and he gets an early release. But the Tigers are confident that he will be there until the end of 2026. So not good news for you Tigers fans about that, because you would have liked to have seen him stay there, build a bit of a combination with Jerome Luai, and you've got also Jareem Buller, a young bloke at fullback there. Actually, the Tigers have got a pretty good spine, so a pretty decent spine compared to some sides. So disappointing news for you Tigers fans, although just live in the moment. You got the win this weekend against the Newcastle Knights, and where to for the Newcastle Knights? Well, they scored a try in the 79th minute, so apparently 22 days between tries. They obviously had a bye in there as well, but just where is their attack coming from? Are they relying too much on Kalen Ponga? He wasn't involved much in the game. He did try a few things here and there, but just like the whole Newcastle side, it just was not happening for them. They only had 43% possession, which makes it hard as well. So, yeah, if you don't have the ball, it makes it hard as well. 32 missed tackles for Newcastle, 29 for West Tigers. So, yeah, where is their attack coming from? What are they going to do? They need to score some points to win some games, obviously. Yeah, a bit of soul-searching needed up at Newcastle. They sit in 12th position on the ladder at the moment. The Tigers have found themselves move up to 7th spot, which is good news for them leading into the Easter Monday game against Parramatta. So if we take, I don't know where Newcastle are going to go from here. Big game for them against the Sharks, they won in this round against the Manly. So where are they going to get the points from? They need to score points. Where are the points going to come from? As we take a look at the ladder after round number 6, and the Bulldogs, who had the bye on the weekend, they sit in top spot, having won all 5 games. The Melbourne Storm are 2, the Broncos 3, the Raiders are 4. The Rabbitohs, Warriors, Tigers, Sea Eagles, they round out the top 8. Just outside the top 8, the Sharks and the Dragons. And then it's the Titans, Knights, Cowboys, Dolphins, Roosters, Panthers, and unfortunately my Parramatta Eels in 17th position, which is not too good at the moment. That is for sure. Now, moving on to round number 7, and we'll look at the clashes here, and I will talk about more of these games in the tipping podcast this week, so stay tuned for that one. But we have the Thursday night kicks off the round. We have the Sea Eagles taking on the Dragons at Brookvale. Now, Good Friday, as it is Easter time this week. So this will be the Good Friday game at 4:05 p.m. The Bulldogs taking on the Rabbitohs. Now, there are reports that this is going to be the biggest rugby league crowd in a normal season fixture in NRL history. So they are expecting about 70,000 plus people there to fill out the stadium. Two arch rivals, the Bulldogs on top of the ladder, the Rabbitohs not so far behind them, but two arch rivals. This game always comes up with something. Every time this game is played, we remember the James Graham charge down on Adam Reynolds at the time. We remember that one. So something will happen in this game, I can guarantee it. But a massive crowd expected out of that clash. The other game on the Friday night sees the Dolphins take on the Melbourne Storm at Suncorp Stadium. On Saturday, the Warriors take on the Broncos over there at Go Media Stadium in Auckland. The Roosters take on the Panthers at Allianz Stadium. Only the two games being played on the Saturday due to the one game being played on the Monday. The Sunday games, the Titans take on the Raiders up at Cbus Super Stadium. The Knights take on the Sharks at McDonald Jones Stadium. And the traditional Easter Monday clash, the Tigers take on the Eels at CommBank Stadium. The Tigers are the home team for that one. Thank you very much for listening to this NRL round review. And as I said, hopefully in coming weeks we will see me joined by a few rugby league identities who will like to do the NRL round review with me. Just let me know, send me a message as to who you would like to hear join me for a NRL round review. But that was round number 6. On to round number 7. Technically sort of a quarter through the season, there or thereabouts. So hard to believe that we're already 7 rounds into the competition. But stay tuned this week for an interview podcast, a game day preview podcast, the tipping podcast with Ella, and much, much more. So give me a follow on Instagram and Facebook, and also Spotify and Apple, where you won't miss a thing. You'll get notification of the podcast dropping straight away. Thank you very much for listening to this. I really appreciate the support and the listenership. And look, the Para Cave podcast, by the fan, for the fans. Go Para!
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Para Cave podcast. See you next time.